I'm Morgan Harper Nichols, and you are listening to The Art of Kindness.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to The Art of Kindness, where we have compassionate conversations with artists from all areas of the entertainment industry who are using their voice to spread joy and make this big spinning planet in the universe a better place to be. I'm Robert Peterpaul, and I'm so glad you're here. It's the most wonderful time of the year. Hello, friends. Woo! Happy December. I hope everyone had a lovely Thanksgiving and is gearing up for the holiday season ahead. I know I'm still full from the turkey, but it's time. Woo! Can't hit that whistle tone note, but that's why we have Mariah Carey. In this household, we've already watched some holiday flicks. Lindsay Lohan is back, y'all. That's all I'm going to say. Spreed the holiday village at Bryant Park and are set to go to more than one cookie exchange in the coming weeks. While seeing loved ones and doing all the holiday festivities is wonderful, I also want to remember to bask in the glow of the little things. Gratitude is the quality of being able to see light in the little things. Morgan Harper Nichols said this. Now, if you came across this quote on her Instagram page, you'd have seen it scripted over an amber-colored background that makes you feel like the sun is shining on your face. Morgan sits at the crossroads of art and words. She is a storyteller in the purest sense. But don't get me wrong, she loves a good meme too. Yes, praise the creative gods. Today's guest is Morgan Harper Nichols. Morgan Harper Nichols is an artist, writer, and creator based in Georgia. Diagnosed with autism, ADHD, and sensory processing disorder, Morgan's work often explores themes of embracing life's narrative and creating room to breathe. She began creating art and poetry in response to social media messages she received in 2017, and since then, her practice has expanded to include digital art, collage, coding, and 3D environments. Morgan is the creator of the app Storyteller and the online shop Garden 24. Her Wall Street Journal best-selling book, All Along You Were Blooming, is one of several published works. She also currently serves as vice president on the board of TWLOHA, a mental health organization. Morgan is passionate about the intersection of art, storytelling, and health. And her long-term goal is to teach and develop resources that explore how we create and interact with narratives in our lives. This conversation was heart-filling on so many levels, and I cannot wait to share it with you, friend. Watch some of today's conversation on our YouTube and social media pages at Rob Peterpaul and at Art of Kindness Pod. And it is the most wonderful time of the year for giving and leaving 5-star reviews of your favorite podcast and maybe sharing that podcast with a friend or two or 7 or 750,000. It would mean a lot to me. Now, without further ado, please enjoy the magnificent Morgan Harper Nichols. And we always put books to our heart, and then we say, what do I need to see right now? And I opened up your book, which we love in this household. And the passage, I won't read yourself to you, but it was all about slowing down and seeing what the moment had to offer. So maybe we needed a beat.
Yes, exactly.
Maybe the internet was giving us a gift.
Yes, I agree with that. Yes.
So where are you? Are you in your own little studio at home? It looks so magical.
Yeah, home studio just outside of Atlanta, Georgia. So
Nice.
Yes, that's we've lived all over and moved back home to Georgia about 2 years ago. So yes. How about you?
Yes. Yeah, I've always been curious about it down there. Where in Connecticut, so we're on the East Coast.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I followed a
Awesome.
have here, and I am not disappointed. It worked out.
That's great. Yes, it's nice when it works out that way.
And you have a podcast as well I've been listening
I
to,
do.
which is so lovely.
Thank you. Yes, I'm trying to get some new episodes up for the fall soon, but yes. Love podcasting.
Well, I do too, and I'm so excited that you've taken the time to join me on mine. What an honor,
of course.
Morgan. I figured while I have you, who I see every day in my Instagram feed or in this beautiful book that we have here, I thought a nice place within this subject would be art and storytelling as a remedy, and sort of the stories we tell about ourselves and how that informs our self-kindness, how kind we are to others. And so I just wanted to set that little tone there before we begin. And before I learn from you, I also will say, again, bowing down, so excited to meet you. This book, I knew your work from Instagram, but this book here, if you don't have it, everyone go run, don't walk, go buy All Along You Were Blooming. Or you might not have to walk anywhere because you can buy it on your phone, honestly. First of all, I have to tell you, I saw my wife reading this beautiful book, this pastel tome, I'll call it, before bed each night. And, you know, we're little readers. We have reading parties, so we'll read together. We're nerds like that. And it's just her way to unwind from the day. And she was so excited to share it with me. And as she did, we started reading it nightly together. We would pick a passage and read it together.
Wow.
And we fall off the wagon sometimes, but there have been some family things recently. And I will say it's the first thing she picks up to kind of calm herself down. So I got to start out with a thank you, because you're touching more people than you probably could ever know.
I'm speechless. I really am. That means so much to hear, because it's something that I came to writing as a place of trying to name emotions and going through difficult experiences and not having the words for it. And it's through art and creative writing that's helped me not find all the solutions, but feel less alone. So it's, when I hear someone say what you just said, it's just like such a full circle moment, because it's like that, in a way, it's like that moment, the thing that you've been trying to do is being reflected back to you. So that means a lot to hear. So thanks for sharing that.
Well, thank you for sharing your gift with the world. I think it's such an act of kindness. So I was thrilled when you agreed to come on our little pod here. And now that I sort of gave you many compliments, and they're all genuine, I really mean everything I've said. I wonder, how are you at accepting compliments? You seem very gracious, but I'm guessing you get a lot of them every day. Is that sort of a journey for you?
That's such a good question. I'm glad you asked that, because I think that's something I've grown in. Because I do think that it was very hard for me to receive them early on. But just because for me, the whole just being a forward-facing creative person is a challenge for me. I'm not organically like you talk to some creators and they're like, oh, I knew I was made for the stage, that's how they start off. They start in that place. It energized. They find it electrifying. For me, it's terrifying. It's like the second, I have nightmares about just standing on stage.
Oh wow.
So that is a lot of work for me, and I do feel like I've grown in that way of just learning how to just receive. That is a lot of work, to just receive something and not feel like you have to do anything with it. It's just receive it and say thanks. That really connects with how I want to feel, and it reminds me that the work I'm doing, it matters. And then also too, one thing that I really actively listen. So when people are sharing, I listen for, you shared, reading before bed, and I'm like, oh wow, a rhythm, thinking about how you're moving through all these daily rhythms and then reading it. So I started thinking about it a whole lot, and I'm just like, it's kind of like being in this world of just receiving for a moment, it's just letting yourself take it in. You don't have to overthink it. You don't have to come up with the perfect response. Just, if you can, just show some gratitude and say thanks for reflecting my work back to me. That means a lot.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I think that's a great reminder for everyone in life, whether I'm at the stage door and someone says good job and I kind of shirk it off because it's more work to sort of be like, oh no, I was sick today and make up a million excuses. It's also about the other person. So it's such a gift to just let that wash over them. Like I know it means a lot for me and it'll mean a lot for my wife, who I tried to get in here to just pop over and say hello. And she was like, I can't. She was too excited. But it does really, it means a lot. So thank you for accepting those moments. And I think everybody in life, if we were all actively listening a little bit more, what a brighter place it would be in this day and age.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something, listening as a form of kindness, really. It has been something I've been thinking a lot about lately, because it's very, I only speak English, so I don't know how it's like in other languages, but within the English language, we have like a lot of words that get used for lots of things. So even if you're just saying like, oh, I'm having a good day, like that same phrase can be applied to someone who's just having like, oh, I feel like I got enough sleep, or like I proposed and they said yes, it's like, that same phrase can cover such a wide range. So I've just been becoming more intrigued about like, how can I ask people, what do you mean by that? Like, how has it been good? If you had to assign the goodness of a day to a color, what color would you say it was? And it's been really interesting as I've just been experimenting with that. Even just like, I'm a parent, like I've been doing that with my son and just asking him if he likes something. I'm like, what do you like about it? Like, do you like its color? Like you said, it makes you feel happy. Well, what color is happy today? And sometimes he'll be like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. But it's just like this fun, it's like there's room to imagine more possibilities with the way that we speak, the way that we talk to one another, even in little things. So I've been really interested in that lately. It's become like, because something I've noticed too about questions in particular is that oftentimes in a lot of contexts, if someone asks you, what do you mean by that? Is a lot of times it's in an argument kind of setting, like someone's trying to get you to say something so then they could take something what you said, and it's like, that's not the only way that we can interrogate. It sounds like a weird word to say, but it's like, that's not the only kind of interrogation there is. It's like there's other ways to kind of open up just in our talking with one another, in our writing and our speaking. So I've been doing a lot of that lately. So, but try not to annoy everyone with it, because sometimes
I love it. Having questions is fun, and I got a lot for you, so get ready. But I think it's interesting because curiosity to me is almost it's a key a lot of the time. To a door, but some people can see it as you banging on the door, not trying to knock it down versus allowing it to open. And I think curiosity and having questions for people is such a kindness. It's you're right. It's very interesting to think about in this world how it's received sometimes as combative, but before we get into all that nitty gritty, and you mentioned being a parent, I think this question might be particularly relevant to kind of lay the soil for our conversation here today. What is your definition of kindness, and how do you think it's changed over time?
Such a good question. I've been thinking about that. And I would say that as a kid and just in my young adult years, kindness was something that I wanted to share with others, but I often felt like it maybe wasn't something that I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like it was something that, okay, you have to learn how to do it a certain kind of way. And you have to, if, for instance, I grew up in the South, and in the South in the United States, there's like a lot of hospitality culture. And for me, as someone who's more introverted, and I also was diagnosed with autism, ADHD as an adult, like
ADHD
having
over here.
Yes, like
if you see me looking around, it's just
yes,
I'm
I
looking
get
at all
it.
these features.
I'm the same. Yes, and it is inviting someone over to the house, like for dinner. That takes a huge load on me. Like, and it takes me a long time to recover. Even if it's something I want to do, and it is something I do, it takes me longer to recover from the average person. So this is how I explain how I used to think about it versus how I think about it now. So we had some guests over the house a few days ago, last weekend. And after everybody went home, I just kind of like did nothing. I just had to like lay there, and I noticed my husband, like he just kept going with the rest of his day. And I was like, wow, like it's so interesting how differently our bodies and, you know, how differently we respond to that. I need a lot more recovery time. Even though we both equally enjoyed it, I just need more recovery time. And the way that I would have used to have interpreted that moment was that I need to be more like him in order to be kind and keep going. You know, it's like we have a child, so in that moment, he's able to like kind of be more engaged. And I was just kind of like, I just need a minute. And I think a younger version of myself may have perceived that as okay, well, you have a lesser kind of kindness in a way because you're not able to do what others are able to do. Similarly, when it comes to art and performance and things like that, at times my stage presence, I get really like nerdy and specific and go on these tangents and things. And then if I'm speaking at an event and the next person is speaking like this, and everyone is weeping 3 minutes in, and I see them after, and they just have so much poise and grace, and people are just, they're so warm. I'm like, oh, why can't I be like that? And so,
we love a tangent here. So,
so yeah, it took, in a way, it kind of like, it's a form of comparison in a way of seeing other people be kind and spending so much time on that. And I think where I've changed now is really thinking of kindness as a kind of thoughtfulness. And it kind of goes back to the old phrase of like, it's the thought that counts. I do think that matters when it comes to kindness, because you don't always know how your kindness is going to be perceived. It's like, sometimes you might be doing something from like the kindness of your heart in like the most sincere way, but it's vulnerable because you don't know how other people are going to see it. So that thoughtfulness part is where it comes in. And that's how I think I understand it now. Like there was one time where on social media, this was years ago. This was like right around like when the lockdown started, and we were approaching like graduation season. And I did this post where I was just talking to graduates, and I was just like expressing like, hey, like this probably has to be a difficult time for you all. And, you know, you're not getting the graduation that you wanted. And it was interesting because most of the comments I received at that time, a lot of them were like, no, actually it's fine. Like, I didn't want to go anyway. Like, I'm an introvert. Like, and it was one of those moments where I was like, oh, but this is a moment where the thought of what I was doing mattered, because it's like, hey, my thought was just to like, you know, hey, I see you. Yeah. And even though their response was like, we're good, you know, it was fine. And I was like, an older version of me would have felt much worse about it. It would have been like, oh, look at you trying to be encouraging, and it didn't go across the way that you wanted it to. And now I say, I'm like, you know what? I know what my intentions were. And I learned from that experience. And the person on the other side knew what my intentions were too. So yeah, I think thoughtfulness is how I would describe it these days.
That's so interesting. And you brought up so many things that we talk about on here a lot, which is that there's a difference between being kind and being nice. And there's a difference sometimes between our perceived kindness and our intention. Yes. And I think you kind of just shed a lot of light on what we've danced around here, which is that as long as you know for yourself that your intention was pure, you can move forward. And it doesn't always matter. I mean, we hope everyone can move forward, but sometimes that's their own journey, and you just have to focus on yours. And it's complex, right, in this world, because we all want to be kind to each other. Yeah. But kindness does mean different things to everyone. No person I've asked that question to over the course of this podcast has said the same thing. Yes. Some people have said, my mom. Some people have said, listening. Some people have said, you know, but not use the same words. Some people have said consideration. So it's such a personal thing that I almost wish we could all walk around with little roadmaps. So every time you go into a classroom, you say, just because I'm not smiling and I'm quiet, it doesn't mean I hate you.
Yes, but that's the art part. You know, that's the art part, is that like when even our the way that we express ourselves, like in the clothing that we wear, in the things that we do, it's like there's room for that. And like training ourselves to be able to see all of the different kind of ways it can come to life. I think that's really beautiful.
Yeah, me too. And also I wanted to ask you, you brought this up before, what color do you feel right now? Because I'm feeling yellow. I'm feeling
yes,
a happy yellow.
Yes, I would say yellowish green. I know that's a weird color. I say it's weird.
Green's my favorite color.
It's kind of like that. So it's a very particular kind of yellow green that you see when you're looking at sun filtering through the leaves on a tree. That's my that's my favorite color, that range. Yeah. I'm actually kind of wearing it right now. This is a little bit more green than that, but that is like a very particular color that to me, it's just like this very like awakening kind of joy. And I just, I love that. I have a tree outside and I see it. I see like the light pouring in through the leaves and I'm like that spectrum of color right there. Yeah, that's how I feel.
Yeah, that stripe of sunshine. I love that. Yes. I've been actually watching the leaves more and more. I just think when you're having a bad day and you look up and you see all these leaves on this one tree moving together, there's something kind of meditational about that, and also a reminder that all these leaves are hanging out. I'm just one little speck. It's going to be okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Looking back, is there an act of kindness that you feel like changed your journey in the arts and kind of led you to where you are today? I'm sure I hope there were a lot of them, but
so many. Yeah. So many. And I would say that the moments that stand out to me, I'll just go with the one that popped in my head the first. Yeah, let's go. And I've shared this story before, but it really was that. I was in community college and this was my third school, and I was about to give up on at least pursuing art in any kind of professional capacity. I was like, this is just not sustainable. Like, I felt like I just couldn't keep up with so many things. And at the time I didn't know I had ADHD. I didn't know I was autistic. So all of that was a barrier as well that I didn't even know was there. But I had this class in my community college. It was like American literature or something like that. Just like one of your standard core classes. Yeah. And I had to write a poem for the class. And my professor pulled me over outside of class and he was like, I don't know if you've ever thought about being a writer, but reading what you just wrote, you should. He was like, the way you wrote that, and like he just like broke it down. I never really had anyone break down what I wrote that way. And in that moment in between classes, he just like laid out all the different ways you could be a professional poet. Like, wow. He was just like, you could go to grad school, you could do this. Like, it was just things that I had never thought of. And I think of that as kindness because he did not have to do that. And he also did not know how I was going to receive it. Like, we know how, young adults, teenagers get used to like, oh, thanks, whatever. But he didn't have any idea how I was going to receive that or respond to that. And I was very receptive, and I ended up taking his advice, and I've let him know several times through the years, all these years later. But it's just became that to me just became such a key moment for me because I was like, I want to be that. It's like, where are those moments that I have in between one thing and the next thing, like in between classes, where I can just share with someone. I'm like, hey, just in case. I just want to let you know, I see what you're doing. I see it, and there's something here. And in case this is helpful, here you go. And that was a very special moment for me. And I've held on to that a lot. And I continue to try to share that in my work and in other ways all the time.
Thank you for sharing that. The power of teachers, right? I mean, teachers are really the backbone of our world, and they can be a little underappreciated. So I always love when the act of kindness someone shares here is about a teacher, because the power of seeing someone too, just actually seeing a person for being another person, which your work does so beautifully somehow. It's like so universal and yet so specific, which is my favorite kind of art.
Thank you.
Speaking of specifics, to have a weird, clunky transition here, I'm wondering, do you have sort of specific small daily doses of kindness before we get into the big stuff that you personally feel like kind of nurture your own well-being and creativity?
Yeah, I'm really into, I mean, it's so silly and typical, I guess you would say, but just like funny, just random funny videos. Like I have, so like my sister and I, like our entire texting thread, it's just like memes, just back and forth. And I mean, it could just be the most like we'll find, like, I think one of our main meme genres is like just super hyper specific nostalgic stuff that like only like a few people would know, and like we're sending each other
with some. I need to know some memes.
Oh, I'm trying to think of some. Just like I can't, there's like this one show, I can't even think of the name of it now, but it would be like, think like, not this specifically, but think like Magic School Bus era.
Oh,
like,
Miss Frizzle.
Like that,
okay,
that era. So not that show specifically. I can't think of the specific show we were talking about the other day because it was more rare. But yeah, we'll just like find like these most just random just movie clips and just all kinds of stuff. Or like I'll have, like, if I've been doing a lot of cleaning, and like sometimes like stuff from childhood, like some of her like journal entries stuff will end up in my stuff, so I'll just like take a picture without any context and just send it to her. So yeah, it's a lot of that, and then this one is fun. And also on that, like so this is gonna be kind of silly, but
listen, I'm a silly goose.
I love watching like reruns and like just shows over and over and over, like Gilmore Girls. Like that's probably my go-to. Just I like turning that one on because it doesn't distract me too much, because I know what happens in every episode. So if I get engrossed for a minute, I'm like I know what's gonna happen, so I don't have to keep looking.
It's calming. That town is not too far from us actually right now as we speak. The town they based it on. Here in Connecticut.
What? There we go. There's my Connecticut connection. That's why I had a positive feeling about it. And so yeah, I'll just like turn that on. Like sometimes while I'm just working on like the most serious things, like I will just turn on either that, or I'll turn on like YouTube compilations of funny videos and just like have them going in the background of like animals doing things. And it's just, it's interesting for me because I'm like, wow, everything I just said involves some kind of screen. And that's something that we kind of typically say as like, oh, less screen time. Okay. I know. Less screen time. But it's just, for me, realistically in my life right now with my work and just being a parent of a young child and like being realistic about my time, I've had to kind of modify, where are these places that I'm getting filled up and that I'm feeling energized. And it's okay if it's a screen. It's okay if it's something really small that's just happening at your desk. I don't think that's like lesser than. So that's what I would say it's been for me right now.
Thank you for saying that, because my wife and I bond a lot with, she'll send me so many funny videos, and for some reason, I don't know why I'm always responding to everyone else on my phone first, but her DMs of all the videos I don't always look at right away. Yeah. She'll sit me down every day and we have to watch them together. And she's like, you better like each one. And we watch them. And then it's become a thing now. I just don't ever answer. And then she's like, I sent you about 20 videos. Sit down. And then we laugh together and then we watch on the screen and then we feel guilty, sort of like what you're saying is, we're just bonding with the screen. But that's such a nice way to be together and also not expel any energy. Yeah. And, we call the TV our healthy screen because it's not as in your face. It's a little further.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
I
it's
agree.
Better for you.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah. So I agree with you. I love that. And I love the acceptance you've given us all and permission, I should say, to do that.
I actually get that question a lot when it comes to my art, because my art is mostly digital. So even if I do, even if I'm doing like acrylic painting or something, I call myself a digital mixed media artist because I'm scanning the work in and it's ending up in some kind of digital format. And because of the way that I make my art, a lot of people don't know that, they may not know that digital something is involved. So I have a lot of people who are like, I'm so glad that this is like, art, and I'm so tired of being on the screen, and I'm like, all my work ends up being on the screen. So it's kind of one of those interesting things. It's like, I definitely have not tried to stare at the screen all day, but I don't really have this like really super strict, like, no screens. It's like, no, sometimes realistically speaking, a screen might be involved in finding those moments that, fill you up. So, yeah.
And you make art so accessible that way, which is another wonderful thing about you, is that you're sharing all these gifts on social media and it's absolutely free. So maybe somebody that can't afford even just to take the time to go to a museum can go to your feed and experience something.
It is such a huge thing. I mean, it's like if I were just like retired and I probably would not even look at a screen. I would have like 20-foot canvases and the most expensive oil paints. But realistically speaking, that's not most people's lives. And a lot of times, like something like a tablet or your phone is just going to be more accessible for, being attached to creative expression in some way, even if it's not the whole thing. So I am proud of that. And I the other side of it is I get a lot of people who get excited when they find out. I'm like, no, here's how you can use a free app on your phone to create some artwork that you can share with your friend or put on social media or print out. And it's always really exciting to see people find that out. Like, wow, this is something I could do from my phone.
Well, I have to say, your art is not only on the screens, but it is transformative. It is healing. It is so powerful, as I've already been telling you throughout this whole conversation. I shared that I was going to have you on the podcast, and listeners and friends and people responded in droves and heaps saying how much they love you. And most of them actually shared a story about what you got them through and what you healed in them. And that's sort of the reason why I wanted to talk about your art as a healing power. I know you are open to receiving people's stories and you create art based off of people's stories.
Yeah.
But is that something you think about, the power of kindness and sort of almost like the therapy like result of your art a lot of the time? I mean, really deeply personal stories I received. I'm sure you receive that every day.
Yeah, that is something that continues to mystify me. I don't really know how to put it in words, what's happening there, other than I do believe that in a world filled with rules, responsibilities, and things beyond your control, art is a space that allows you to kind of take a breath from that. And in a way, I see making art, and this, whether it's poetry, whether it's film, whether it's you're making a room. Like, it's not just a thing. It's a space that people are entering into, even if they can't physically hop into the painting or physically hop on stage.
Like Blue's Clues.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be cool. I would definitely love to do that. So if anyone out there has any technology to do that, I don't know, maybe that's
I'll send you that meme later.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I would love to make some of that, but it creates a space, and I think that's how I approach it, because at times it's like, I'm like, well, I don't know that person, their story. A lot of times, like, even if someone shares with me a story, oftentimes it's just a few words. Like, I'm having to really use my imagination as to how to speak to a story that someone's only shared like a few words. And I'm like, I can make a space though. I can make a room with this piece of art, with what I've made, where you feel like you're allowed to feel that, and you feel like you're allowed to acknowledge this year has been really hard. And I don't have to like force myself to be positive about it right away. Like, I'm allowed to say, this sucks. I'm allowed to say, I wanted that to happen, and then the opposite happened, and now I just don't want to do it right now.
Yeah.
Or like, I don't want to lecture right now. I just want someone to listen. Like, you're allowed to say that. So that's what I seek to do. And I'm also really inspired by fiction. So I was like a very avid fiction reader as a kid, and I was really into like fictional world building and making fiction. So even when I am writing in response to something that someone shared with me or something I've seen, I'm also thinking about that imaginative, fictional, like what if component, because it's like that is fiction that allows us to kind of like imagine what could be beyond what is. And it becomes a space. It's like when you're physically reading a novel, you're entering into a world, you're entering into a space. So that's what I hope it is. And it means a lot to hear that other people can feel that, like they feel like they can experience it. And I think one time I really that stood out to me the most was a rare occasion. I've only done this a few times where I will make artwork and in response to something someone shares with me, and I will send it to them before I send it anywhere else. And one or a few times I did this thing where I didn't put any words on it, and I just did colors. So someone shared with me their story, and I spent all this time like painting it. And I remember it was like a lot of shades of blue, and I was like, I think the emotions in the colors itself, I think what I'm trying to say, there are no words for it. And I sent it, and their response was like, this is exactly what I'm feeling like this.
Wow.
And it wasn't even like a figurative, it was an abstract piece, really, with one color palette. I was like, yeah, I can't take credit for like that is beyond me. I'm like, that is bigger than just me. And I found that to just be so moving, and it takes the pressure off even of like, you have to be this perfect artist who has to like say everything. It's like, no, make a space. Like just make a space that people can feel like they can almost kind of like project in a way. It's like project their own emotions onto it. It's like I don't know if you ever did this when you were a kid, but
Probably.
I feel like every time my sister and I would like get like a new show that we like to watch, like Powerpuff Girls, like we would always like we would project ourselves onto the character. You know, she's like, I'm Bubbles, and it's like, I'm Buttercup. Like you're like, who am I in this? And I think in a lot of ways as adults, we're still doing that. Like we're still like, who am I in this thing that I'm seeing in the world? So when you see things that have flowers or colors that you really like, or something in nature that speaks to you, it's like, oh, I can see myself in that. It's like, I might not literally be a tree, but I want to be someone who feels rooted, but also has branches that can sway and change. So yeah, I think about that a lot. It takes the pressure off of like, okay, you have to perfectly communicate to all these people. It's like, I can't do that, but I know that enough people out there know what a tree is. Enough people out there enjoy yellow or enjoy green, and they can kind of
or the yellow green of the leaves in the sunlight.
Exactly. Yeah. And they can kind of bring something into that. So
Well, it also takes a lot of pressure off of the viewer, the spectator, because sometimes with art, like we were saying before, this art is so accessible and brings people down many different paths, and it's personal, it's universal. But there can be a pressure to sort of see, quote unquote, the right thing, or read a poem and find the right answer and analyze it the correct way. And by creating a space, which is also the name of your lovely newsletter, or at least it was, which everyone should subscribe to, and I do. And I get it every morning, and I start my morning with a deep breath and a read. I think it there's no right or wrong. And that's a gift. I like to live in the gray. Not everything's black and white. And if you can sort of be in a space where you can have your own canvas, you know. I'm picturing, I want to go to like an interactive installation of your work where you're like in an actual space, and it'll happen, I'm sure.
That's the dream. Yeah, there is this Japanese art team. That's probably not the technical way they say it, but they're called Team Lab. And my dream is to like intern at Team Lab at my old age. But I'm just like, I'm like, whatever they're doing, I want to do that. Like they do all this really interesting, like immersive art experiences. So at some point I do want to do that, because I think that we could use some more interactive art experiences in the world. There's nothing wrong with art on a canvas on a wall. I enjoy that too. There's ways to interact with that. But I do think about that quite a bit. So maybe someday.
Well, I used to work with David Corrins, who's a set designer. He did like Hamilton, and he helped. I know.
What? I am obsessed with set designers. Like
Oh, really?
We went to go see Wicked off Broadway. And I mean, I love Wicked, but all I could think about was the set design. Like I was like, do you all see that clock? I'm like, what? I get so distracted by set design.
Oh, me too. I'm like, how is that happening?
I have so much respect for it. It is just, it's a magical world they're creating. There's so much to it. So that's fascinating that you had that close up view.
Yes, and I will say he's a brilliant man. He has a whole team. I mean, he admittedly doesn't even really know how to use any like CAD or any of the design
that's amazing.
software. He just has this brain and these ideas that he can communicate. I bring it up because he designed the Van Gogh immersive experience in New York City.
Wow, okay. And that is incredible.
Maybe there's a collab there.
Yes, I would love to know more about that because I'm a fan at this point. Like, I'm just like, this is, I'm like, this is really cool work. I have no idea what's going on, but it looks amazing.
Well, that's how I feel about your work, except I feel like I know what's going on, even if I'm always not on the nose. And I'm just really curious. We've touched on it a bit, but what is your relationship with inspiration? Is it sort of a lightning that strikes you? Are you like a lightning chaser, always looking for it? Or are you kind of a lightning bug, maybe, to continue this metaphor where you could just turn it on whenever you want?
I wish it was that. I will say that. So I'll try not to go on a tangent here. I have a lot of thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts on inspiration. So the word, as someone who, like many people who are creative, struggle with staying inspired, being inspired, that's me. So I'll just start off with there. I absolutely deal with that. And secondly, I'm like, I'm going to figure this out, though. I'm like, I want to solve this problem. So I started looking up the word inspiration, and I was surprised to find that, like I was talking about earlier, English language, we keep using the same word for 80,000 things.
Yep.
I was surprised to find that it also means, it's also a form of describing inhalation, like inhaling, like in a respiratory sense. So I was like, that's kind of interesting. I was like, inspiration is actually more about the input, inspiration, than it is output. So I was like, inspiration is just me taking in the world around me. And then my art is me figuring out what parts of that to exhale. So I try not to think about inspiration when I'm at a page. I'm not like, I need to be inspired. I have been inspired because I have been inspiring all day. And it's just a matter of figuring out how to channel what I have inspired into something to expire, to exhale. So what that looks like practically is a phone with 100,000 screenshots. Like of everything. Like I'm taking screenshots, pictures all the time. I forgot
some flashes during this conversation. I didn't want to say anything. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes, I've been screenshotting this entire call.
My niece does that on FaceTime with my niece. I just see screenshot, and it's like up to, I'm like, okay, hi.
I love that. That. I'm taking notes all the time. And it's not even a matter of like going back and looking at every single one or even organizing all of them, especially when it's digital. I don't worry about organizing every little thing, but it's just a matter of like being in a practice of inhaling and like inspiring. So it's like if I'm watching a movie that I enjoy and I'm feeling emotions, that is I'm inspiring. It might sound weird to say, but it's like I'm taking that movie in, and a little thread of that as inspiration might show up on a canvas later. So that's kind of how I see it. I'm all about, a major theme for me is taking the pressure off as much as possible. I'm like, life is stressful enough. So
thank you.
Life is stressful enough on its own. We do not have to make this more complicated than it has to be. So yeah, that's something that I love that. I really try to practice as much as possible. Like, how can I just inspire, take in? That could just even be like flipping through a book, flipping through an old magazine. Just like, don't worry about where it's all going to go. Just open yourself up to inspire, to take in.
Wow. I needed to hear that. I think probably a lot of people listening needed to hear that. And it also takes the pressure to go with your theme off of you sort of said this, but off of what you create. And it puts it on the process, because we're supposed to enjoy the process, take in the process, and then whatever happens. And I think that's a great reminder of that. You put that so brilliantly that I'm going to re-listen to that about 80,000 times and then put it in my AirPods and fall asleep to it every night.
Oh my goodness. Yes, well, I'm glad I was able to share it because
Yes.
it's been stressing me out too. That's where it comes from. I'm like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm like, I know it's important, but we got to figure it out.
I can imagine too. How has your process sort of been informed by the fact that now you have this community and this pressure of people? There is a famous poet, his name's escaping me. You might know the name, but he was like considered one of the best poets of all time and had this sort of one-off, and then he went and retreated and didn't want to be famous.
I wonder who
and
that
he was
is.
like, I can't coexist with both of them. And then he would come back and publish a book and then leave.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So how do you balance that?
Oh,
all
my
the
goodness.
energy coming your way.
Yes. I will give you like just like a random list, but it's just like the most practical for me when it comes to the internet component, which is, we all know a lot. One way I deal with that is just having a bunch of accounts. Like there's sometimes where I get mental blocks where I start overthinking things. So I'll just like post on my apps account. I was like, it just feels like less pressure over there. Sometimes if I'm working on like a book or something and I'm getting stuck, I will sometimes literally make up a fictional story about a character who has to write this book and then make the character write the book. I'll just open up a Word doc and I'm like, okay, it's time for Harriet to write this story. And this is how she would do it. Because Morgan doesn't have a clue. So
I love that.
I'm always looking for other ways like that. Like I had a whole point. I just finished my master's degree, and
congratulations.
Thank you. I had a whole point where I was just deep in my studies, and I was just like, I just want to delete every app. I'm so sick of all of it. I'm just so tired of it. And I created a TikTok account for a potato. And like, like a bag of potatoes, like just like a regular bag of potatoes from the store.
I need to find this.
I
deleted
it.
Sorry,
I deleted it because I accidentally deleted it because I was logged into too many accounts on my TikTok, but and then I couldn't get back at it, and I don't know what happened to it, but I have screenshots of it somewhere. I did a podcast episode on it. I do talk about it in depth, but it was
I'll have to find it.
The reason
We're potato people over here. I threw a potato party for my wife for her 30th birthday this year.
Are you serious?
It was a surprise party.
Amazing.
And she was screaming about potatoes. And I was like, I guess I have to try and make up a potato party.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Everyone bought a potato dish.
It.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so y'all really are potato people. I love it. Yes, I just did it to just like make social media fun. Like
you're like, I actually hate potatoes.
Yeah, no, I do. I do love potatoes, but I didn't like bake them or anything. And that's what was funny about it. Every time I would tell people like, oh, it's just like recipes with potatoes. I'm like, no, I literally started it to just make social media fun and like to just not make it so serious. Because it does get, I mean, as you know, once you have a brand, it is your job and it's creative all at once. So having those things that are just like strictly just for fun. I've created a Sims 4 YouTube channel one time. I just made like this is like 2 years ago. I just like made two videos.
I miss the Sims.
I love Sims
so much.
And so that's how I balance it, because there could be a major imbalance when it's like your job and it's something that literally millions of people could see. So creating the other side of it where it's like, this is just for fun. This is just, or maybe it's just for research and development, just to see what's out there. Just let yourself be curious. That has been helpful for me. And it's been helpful for me very specifically to do it in the same place that's been stressing me out. So Instagram, for instance, it's like Instagram and TikTok as a creator, they do kind of stress me out a little bit, especially the way things are going now, because they really prioritize sending your content to people who have no context of you. So that can be harder if you're trying to have a community, because you now have to factor in, okay, if I share this, it is likely, even if I have 2 followers now, that 1 million people who don't know me could see this. So that's a whole new dynamic that is becoming more common on these platforms. So what I've started to do with like my fun accounts is just like make a random fun account, just kind of do something just to kind of remind myself, like, let this be where you just kind of explore creatively. And if it takes more time or courage on the bigger accounts, then let that be. Like, don't pressure yourself to feel like you have to keep adapting and contorting to every little social media change. So that's how I at least tried to deal with all of it.
Well, no, that's very similar actually to something my wife did a couple years back, which I think was maybe how she started following you, was that her social media feed, it was probably during the pandemic, was just getting so dark. And so she did a social media cleanse and she said, I'm only following accounts that bring me positivity and joy.
Wow.
Because it's what you consume. And whether you realize it or not, you're inhaling it, you're taking it in.
Yeah. And
to have at least a couple nice things on there, whether the algorithm brings you them or not, is important.
Exactly.
So, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, you put out so many wonderful things on social media, like before when you were talking about just letting yourself feel how you feel. I remembered your little hey post with the yellow background, I think. And you had this great note, I remember a while back. And it was basically just like,
that means a lot. I'm really proud of that post. Like I don't know where, in terms of inspiration, I'm like, I guess it was a lot of things just culminating at that moment. But yes, thank you.
No, thank you. Is that what you follow? Because I was curious. I know sometimes you sort of have themes, but do you look at it like monthly? Is it just organic for you? How do you kind of choose what you want to explore?
I'm getting there. I'm trying to get there. I have not been good at thinking too much ahead. For me, and I know you mentioned ADHD too. I don't know if this is something like time is just like a weird thing. You know, it's just like I think about time, I'm aware of time, but it just kind of gets really jumbled. So what I have been doing, and I'm proud of myself because I just reached a year of it. I finally did it so I have my app called Storyteller, and I have a, on that page, I've been doing like a free daily affirmation for a year. And I kept that up for a year and I planned it out a month in advance. That's the first time I've been able to do that. Wow. I didn't write out the full thing like a month in advance, but I had like, I'm talking about this day for 30 days. That's the first time I did it. So I just got to that point 7 years in of like somewhat of like a content calendar. Even that sounds weird to say.
I know. But this is nice to hear because it's
it took me a long time.
It always hits what you're doing and it's always relevant and organic. And someone could look at your page and think it's perfectly curated and planned out.
Oh, no.
But maybe it's not. It's just supposed to be a space like we're talking about, and that can be powerful on its own. That said, do you sort of have? I don't want to call it a warm-up routine, but maybe because I'm a performer, I'll call it that. Something that gets you into the creative mindset. Is it scrolling for those funny videos, or do you have?
It's actually probably a very boring answer. So
sometimes those are the most interesting.
I have a series of spreadsheets of everything I've ever made. And what I will oftentimes do is I will just go back through those spreadsheets. Like I don't wait for the emotional, inspirational part, like, cause that's just gonna take forever to come. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, where did I leave off? You know? So I have been doing like my app for a few years. So I have quite a bit in there. And then I've been doing social media for a few years. And then I have my books. So I kind of see it as like, this is all accumulating and it doesn't have to be like, you have to invent something new all the time. A lot of times actually today I had this experience where I scrolled to someone's social media post and the first post was like just kind of like a call in and I was like, oh, I can't wait to read this. And I swiped and then the first thing they had to inspire you was something I said. I was like, oh wait, I need to hear that.
Like, thank you, me.
Yeah. So that's kind of how I see it. It's like this might sound kind of strange for some people, but even if you're not a writer, there are things that younger you probably said that could inspire you today. Like, even if you're someone who's like, I'm not a writer, I've never said anything meaningful or profound, I highly doubt it. At some point, there could have been just one little thought that you had at 15. And it could be something funny. Like, it could be just something hilarious and offbeat and just totally you that you said at 15 or 22 that if you heard it today, you'd be like, of course that I said that back then too. So that's kind of how I've started to see my writing now. As someone who has been journaling since I was 8 years old, I've been keeping up a journal or a diary of some kind since 1998. I was 8 years old.
With the little lock? Did you have the one with the little, remember in the 90s they had the little,
Yes. Every millennial girl journal thing that you can find. I probably had it or wanted to have it.
My cousins had it. I'm like trying to pick it.
Oh, yeah.
And they're like on their clear cell phone in
Yes.
their bubble chair.
Yeah. You know, those are the good.
They were. I
those
love
were
the
the good old
90s.
days. Oh, those were the good old days. So yeah, I've been doing that ever since then. And what I found is like, that's how I find inspiration. It's like from like older versions of myself, if that makes sense. Like there's things that like back in those early days of lockdown, like there's things that I said around like April 2020 that I couldn't have articulated that way today. But then I go back and I read it and I'm like, oh, but it still connects with today. I can see how this still applies today. So that's something I try to encourage people to do, whether they're creative or not, is like, just start keeping some kind of record of your thoughts, your ideas about things, because there's more inside of you than you realize. There's more wisdom inside of you than you realize. And you're going to go back and read some of the stuff and be like, nah, doesn't apply anymore. Or, and that's
it's like
okay.
April 25th, I ate a bag of Cheetos.
Exactly.
Oh, did that again today.
And a lot of it is that, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
But just being in the practice of like writing those things down, like you never know, how those things are going to impact you later. So that's what I do.
Yeah.
And then the second thing I have like another spreadsheet.
Wait, but that's brilliant. I need to say it because so many people ask the question, what advice would you go back and tell your younger self? And I think you flipping the script there it just connects with me on such an intense level because you're right.
Yeah.
We can teach ourselves that life is answering the question you brought up before. Who are we?
Yep.
Well, that's life. It's
Yep,
figuring that out, exploring it. And you never probably will, but the pursuit is the point.
Absolutely.
And so then thing number 2, I just had to say that was
I'm
wonderful.
so glad you did. I'm so glad. Thank you. And it's just another version of that. And that's just keeping up with quotes that other people have said to me that I find very meaningful. So I have like a list of, and I don't separate them. I have a list from famous people that really spoke to me, like everyone from Toni Morrison to Audre Lorde, like everyone that people would know, all the way down to people that are just have been in my everyday life, and including moments. So on that same spreadsheet, and I think it's just called quotes. It doesn't have a famous name, and it's not all quotes, but I have like stuff like the friend in college who gave you that mixtape and that's how you found out about Sufjan Stevens. Like I just have things like that just written out every time I think about it, and it's all there together. I don't hierarchy it amongst, hierarchy of like famous people versus right. No, it's all there. And that it's kind of like this inspirational board. And making a spreadsheet keeps me doing it because, like, there have been previous versions of this where I tried to make it too artsy, but then sometimes it gets too fixed. But a list, just keeping a running list, that's something like anybody can do. All the different versions of me with ADHD can remember to do. It's like, okay, I know. Once I get bored of that, a list, I can remember that. So, yeah.
I love that. Yeah, I relate to that on multiple levels. I mean, so many things you've touched on are such self-kindnesses. I also think a huge part of self-kindness, and for someone like you who's in the public eye now, it requires boundary setting. So how do you kind of navigate your personal and professional life now that you have this community and this following, and you're such an open book and so vulnerable and so articulate and artistic and all the things, and at the same time, you're a living human who has to protect your heart. Have you found that journey to be difficult?
Yeah, you have such good questions.
Oh, thank you.
That is such a good question. Yeah,
Thanks.
For me, it's knowing, for me, boundaries looks like having a place for things and knowing where things go. So for instance, I do not see social media as a place to connect with friends in a deep way. Some people do that and that is okay. But I've decided that that's not what I do. Like for me, it's in group chat text messaging. For me, it's on the Marco Polo app, if it's going to be on my phone, if it's not, or in person. So I decide like that's not where I do that. So I don't feel the pressure to say like always be on Instagram to try to keep up with every single thing. I'm like, if I want to find out what's going on in my friend's life, like I do try to be in the habit of texting them and not just waiting for a social media post. And I'm also like that even when it comes to just people like reaching out to me. Like I've started to share with people like, hey, like DMs are getting really hard because the filters on Instagram don't really filter everything right. So I'm like, if you email me, there's a chance it could be seen more. I don't see everything, but I just start to say like as many little things as I can. Like, hey, this has a place, that has a place. And that helps me kind of focus. So I'm very clear about like how I see Instagram in particular. Like, I'm like, this is a space where I share the visual and creative writing part of my work. And that's about all I have time for because even with that, there is so much upkeep that comes with that. There's checking for typos in posts. There's responding to questions because sometimes I might turn a piece of work into a sticker and it's like, well, what size is a sticker? So you're answering questions. It's like just with those two things, like that is a full-time job. So I'm very serious about that. And I also allow if it needs to change in the future, it can. Like, maybe someday I'm going to wake up and be like, you know what? I really want to start sharing my Sims 4 content with my community.
Please do. We're
and
waiting.
As tempting as it is, I don't do it because I'm like, I need to have boundaries around this thing. And if I add another thing, then that's going to keep me here more. And I have other things I need to do in life. So it's in some ways I feel like it's kind of like a boring answer, but it really is the most realistic for me. Like I don't like, for instance, with TikTok or any new social media that comes up, I am like, it's a place where I'll explore. I'll try some things, but I'm not going to put pressure on myself to like make my TikTok exactly like my Instagram. It's like, it's okay to just be like, I put some things there. I explore there. But I don't have to treat it exactly the same everywhere and be everywhere all the time for everything. That's just not sustainable. So really knowing where, when and where you're going to do certain things, that has been very helpful for me.
This is helpful for everyone. Continually the theme is taking the pressure off. And that maybe that's part of the healing you provide because pressure is a killer, you know? So
it's very true.
Yeah, I think that was a wonderful answer, even for people that aren't in the arts and just on social media with friends who say, oh, you didn't like my last post. You didn't see I just posted that. Why are you asking me that? It's like, oh, well, maybe I'm not as invested as you are on social media, and that's okay.
Exactly.
At the same time, and I know we're actually approaching time here. Do you have like 5 more minutes?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm just going to get a sip of water really quick. Oh. That's okay. Sorry.
Chug. No, I'm just kidding. Makes me wonder, you know, being a role model sort of as an artist on social media and then having this community and this responsibility, do you see and feel the need to kind of foster this kindness and this love within your own sort of comments and community? Sort of what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, yes. That's something I think about a lot. And I will say, like, I try not to be like social media doomer person, like, but that's an area where it has honestly gotten so difficult because a lot of the things that I used to try to do to really foster community on Instagram in particular, it's a lot harder. Specifically because like your posts are just getting shared to people who don't have context, which if it's like a meme, that's fine. But it's like when you start talking about things that people might be leaving comments about their trauma or their different experiences, I am very protective about that. Like I want people to feel safe to comment. So I try to now I've really started to like if I think that a topic someone might want to share sensitive information, I have started to put some of those things on Substack or in my mailing list or in my app. And I try to offer as many free options as I can to take that pressure off. Because a lot of times if someone especially if someone is not, on social media professionally, they may not realize that I'm leaving this comment here about something going on in my life. But then if this post goes viral, then there could be people coming and responding to me with really harmful things. And for me, I'm like, I can take any comments because I was like, okay, yeah, it's social media. People can say anything, but I don't want other people to feel like, I don't want to put them in that. So and
then they start defending you, and then it's a fight between them.
And it just turns to a whole thing, and that's always every time I've tried to like even address that, a lot of times people are like, oh, we'll defend you. I'm like, it's actually not me. I'm like, I signed up for this. When you sign up to be a public figure, you sign up for people to, of course you don't want all the wild stuff that can happen, but there's an awareness that of like, okay, people who don't know me are going to say things, but it's something different if someone's commenting their personal story and then people that they don't know are just like, well, you should try this. And then there's so many bots too. And so I try not to be like social media, like doom. But I will say it has become harder for me to like say, hey, let's all leave comments about this. So what I try to do is just foster those spaces elsewhere. So I send out a free email every day. And in that free email, thank you. In that free email, I encourage people like respond and, respond to me, and I'll respond to a lot of people there. And to me, I feel like that's the same thing. Like it still has that same level of like, that you are free to respond to this. And I welcome that. It may not always happen on, it's like, Instagram is 14 years old now. It's like these things are going to change. So it's just, for me, it's a matter of like, okay, that may have been Instagram in the early days, but maybe as time goes on, the places where we connect more deeply, those platforms might change, and that's okay.
Well, and I appreciate you creating your own kind spaces, with the Storyteller app and your newsletter and just your community, because you're right. I mean, it's sort of how we perceive it, but it can be hard when other people's perception isn't the same. And then they come in with this other energy that maybe you don't want around there.
Yeah.
But I will thank you just for always being a bright spot on social media. Because I know if I go to my little Explorer button, or I see you in my newsfeed, I see your signature colors, I know it's going to make me feel okay. And I felt that today with your newsletter, everybody. You said something similar to what we were talking about, which is that it's okay to sort of, I think, not have the answers, and what will be, what will come, will come. Anyway, I read it. Okay, so anyway,
thank you.
as we wrap up here, because I know I got to let you go, which is sad. I could talk to you for like another year, but when you think about the legacy you want to leave with your work, which I know starting off, this sounds like a big question. What is it? No. I know you're so passionate about also developing specific resources like we were just discussing that explore the intersection of art and health, which I think is very similar to the theme of this podcast. How do you think kindness plays a role into that vision?
That's such a good question. And I can say when I think about legacy, for me, the word legacy and teacher are connected. So the story I shared earlier about my professor, that to me is the kind of kindness that I want to share through legacy. It's like, if I can help someone else feel like they can have their own version of what I do, it's like, if they've seen anything I've done and they're like, wait, but what's my version of that? I'm like, that right there. That's what I'm going for. Because I think that's where things get passed on. And I consider myself to be very, very privileged that I've gotten to meet, I got to meet one of my favorite songwriters ever. And it was a moment where, John Foreman of Switchfoot. So, Switchfoot. Yes. Switchfoot was like my favorite. Yes.
I dare you to move. No,
exactly. Yes. Let's sing it. Yes.
Okay. Sorry. I just got overtaken.
Yes. No, that's it. I know. And it's like that feeling. And I got to have whole conversation with him. And I walked away feeling like I want to keep making my version of what your work made me feel like. And I want to pass that on. That feeling I had, that empowerment that I felt when I discovered your music when I was going through a really hard time as a teenager. And that's what I want to help pass on. It's not about me. It's about how can it pass on, through me, yes, but beyond me. So that's kind of what I hope. Like one of my favorite moments is when I get like DMs from people or emails and they've like made their own version of my artwork. I that to me I'm like, yes, please. That's amazing. Like take it, make your own, like do better than I've done. Like go on, like keep it going. I really get excited about that. So that's kind of what I hope my legacy to be is to just pass it on.
I think that's wonderful, that collaboration, and it's very generous of you. And you've been so generous with your time, which I think is one of the kindest things you can do for someone. So unfortunately, I got to let you go, but I would love if you could just end our little shared space together by sharing a tangible kindness tip. So something you would like listeners out there to do every day on their own corner just to make the world a little brighter.
Yes. I would say every day, find a way that you can leave a kind comment on something. So that could be on some social media page, maybe like a creator who has like 200 followers. That little comment of saying like, I really like your art, they're going to remember that. Like people remember those things. A non-internet version of that is just saying to someone like, hey, I really like what you said yesterday. That meant a lot to me in that meeting. Thanks a lot. And that's all. That's just kind comments. I think I like kind comments because that's something that it's a way to develop the muscle of just like being kind without like attachment. Like you don't know if they're going to respond or if they want to go deeper with it or if they'll circle back later. You don't know, but that's how you can get in a practice of just being aware and noticing things that are meaningful to you, things that feel kind to you in the world, and you just want to speak to it. So just one kind comment a day.
That's amazing. Kind comments, and it has alliteration.
Yes,
I really like the specificity of that. No one said that yet.
Yes.
And championing other people is also why we're here. We got to lift each other up. And that said, I just so admire you, and I truly feel privileged to be in a world where you exist and we can find your art and your words because they are transformative and they don't ever feel, what's the word? I know it's coming from you and it's healing for you in a way, but it gives so much and you're changing the world. So it's amazing to watch you grow and I can't wait to see what you do next. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed this. I was looking forward to this and I'm so glad we were able to chat today. I really am.
Oh, me too. And I just, again, I'm going to be following you, not in person, that's so creepy, online forever. And just, now I'm spiraling. And now it's time for your kindness tip of the week. Did you know that science shows when we give to others, it improves our well-being? Did you know that? Not only is giving to others good for the receiver, but it comes back to us. And again, it's not why we do it, right? We talk a lot about that on here. Although I say, if you need a little pick-me-up this holiday season, why not decide to just do something good as a remedy, you know? It'll only have amazing ripple effects out there. Now, giving can come in many forms. We can give our time to someone. We can give money to someone. There are so many organizations out there that will be looking for your donations this Giving Tuesday and beyond. And that's wonderful if you have the means to do so. Actually, while we're here, I do want to shout out the incredible L. Morgan Lee, who we featured in our live BroadwayCon episode a while back. L. Morgan is such a light in the Broadway community, such a talent. I'm talking Tony nominee, okay? Woo! And also an incredibly beautiful and vulnerable soul. She really puts out so much joy and cheer on social media, which we need more than ever. And so it was all the more powerful recently when I came across a video of hers explaining that she needs our help. She put aside her shame and her pride and decided to ask for help. And I thought it was one of the most heartbreakingly beautiful things to witness. Her hand is reaching out to us as she has fallen on hard times. And for someone of her stature, magnitude, power, whatever you want to say, in this industry, to make a video like this, when so many artists around the world are also struggling, It's powerful on a lot of levels. First of all, it's powerful in the sense that all the people that look up to her are now getting a real life glimpse into the daily struggle of an artist. Behind the glitz and glamour that we might see on red carpets, there's a lot more going on. I saw this during the pandemic. I know myself, obviously, there were no theatrical productions and no TV or film projects shooting. I mean, that's a big reason why I started this podcast, was to have a creative outlet. And I also saw friends that were on Broadway delivering packages for Amazon, going back to their restaurant jobs. And all this to say, I really applaud that Elle Morgan did this. Thank you for doing this. I know it must have been incredibly hard to put out there, and I'm sorry that you had to put it out there, and I wish that you weren't in that position. But I love that you are asking for help, and I think that's a great lesson for everyone out there. It is kind to yourself to ask for help, and you know what? It's also kind to others because people want to help you. I know helping others makes me feel the best ever. I mean, that's my favorite thing to do in life, I think, is helping others, right? How good does that make you feel to help someone do the dishes? How good does that make you feel to donate money? How good does it make you feel to see the person struggling with their groceries and hold the door open for them? Or go the extra step and carry the groceries for them? These things make us feel good. So again, it's kindness on so many levels, and I know this was a bit of a tangent, and I hope it made sense. I just want to shout out the fact that Elle Morgan put this beautiful video out on her Instagram. She started a GoFundMe so we can all go help her in this lull period where she needs us. So please, if you're in the position to, head to the link in her bio on Instagram at Elle Morgan Lee. We are sending so much love your way, Elle Morgan. On another level, I think we can give to others by simply shouting out our friends and highlighting the people that are working so hard in this world to achieve their dreams. And so this time of year, it makes me want to shout from the rooftops right next to Santa, ho, 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 about my friend, the Cozy Christmas Podcast. If you're looking for the most warm, fuzzy listen, check it out wherever you listen to podcasts. You may even hear a familiar voice in a certain episode. So please, no matter how you do it this holiday season, give. Remember to give to others. It also gives to you, and it helps us build a kinder world. You have given me so much by tuning in and sharing space with me today. That reminds me again of the wonderful Morgan Harper Nichols. Woo! What a great episode, right? I need to re-listen and learn from her. I'm going to play that on a loop, honestly, as I just go throughout life. Thank you, Morgan Harper Nichols. Thank you all for listening. And remember, until next time, everything is going to be A-OK.